why was Ahab such a horrible person? Well, it tells you. First off, it tells you that he was worse than the worst guy they ever had before him. So, but then he says, he erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. Baal is a god that demands the sacrifice of your firstborn. Abram, remember the guy asleep on the ground from earlier? Abram was from Ur, and they had an altar there to the god Baal where they sacrificed children, firstborns. And archaeologists have found all this, by the way. They found the altar, they found the temple or whatever the complex is called, and there were the skulls, burned skulls of thousands and thousands and thousands of children. So when we read about Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac on the mountain, don't think that Abraham was a total monster because he came from a culture where that was done. Look, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying that was the culture he came from, Baal worship. So, and then it said, and Ahab made an Asherah. Ahab did more to provoke the God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel who had gone before him. What is an Asherah pole? We're all adults, so I'm just going to speak plainly. An Asherah is a monument to a fertility goddess. It is a giant penis.
Really?
Yes. Not making it up. I said. Anyway, but there are no kids here and it's not Sunday morning, so I can just talk. It's a giant pole, and they would have orgies in the foot of this pole on the side of the mountain where everyone could see them for fertility, to ask for abundant crops, abundant rain, a good year, a good harvest, good children, good everything, right? And then, after you had the child that you had because of the favor of this fertility goddess, if it was your firstborn, you would sacrifice it to the god of Baal by fire. You'd take your kid, and it wasn't just kids, it was cattle, it was anything that you had control over.
What was?
And you would slit its throat, cut it, sprinkle its blood on the altar, and then burn the carcass.
What was the ridiculous reasons for doing that?
I don't know. I can tell you this.
It's to atone for their sins.
Yeah, it's totally satanic. It's totally satanic and a complete perversion of God's order.
Yeah, that was a perversion of it.
Yeah. And you still see it to this day. What is the most beautiful, wholesome thing that you can do as a family? Have sex. To make children, to continue family, to produce more of society, to produce more of God's kingdom. Procreate, to make family. That's what God told Adam and Eve to do. Go forward, multiply, make family. So, where does Satan go?
Attacks the family.
Sex, lust, attacking the family, getting the fathers out as much as possible and making the government your daddy, making women whores, destroying things like the value of virginity. Again, we're all adults here, so I can just talk. By absolutely polluting everything about the family, pornography, sex workers, everything twisted, everything ugly, everything bent, everything messed up, to prevent anything that it takes to prevent God's kingdom from moving forward, to make sure that, and I'm coming full circle, and this hardly ever happens, and I'm excited, to make sure that seed is perverted and twisted so that it can't come forward and crush Satan's head. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. It's self-preservation for Satan. And I know we've talked about this before. Satan is not a name. That's not the dude's name or the entity's name. Satan is literally the Satan. It means the accuser. Mm-hmm. It means the accuser. And what's the very first thing you see him say? Did God really say? He was accusing God of being a liar. Very first words out of his mouth recorded in the book. So it's all about attacking the family, tearing the family apart, ripping it to shreds on every single level you can imagine. If you look at the footnotes, for those of you who have the notes, if you look at the, there's a double asterisk where it says Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal. By the way, B-A-L-L at the end of that name means that he, when he was born, his name was dedicated to the god Baal. Anytime you see that. If you see the letters E-L at the end of someone's name, like Michael, it means that they were dedicated to Yahweh, to El, to the god El, which is Yahweh, which is our God. King of the Sidonians. The Sidonians, by the way, when Joshua and Caleb came into the promised land after the place had been prepared for them and all those who did not believe died in the desert in those 40 years, even Moses didn't get to enter the promised land. But when they came into the promised land to begin taking it, God said, take it, drive out all the inhabitants, take it for yourself, don't leave anybody there that's there. The Canaanites went north and they established Sidon as a principal seaport, and eventually that culture merged into what we call the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were a great seafaring people who eventually ended up settling in Malta. You know what else they were? They were mudbloods. They were descendants of the Nephilim. And all of these giants in the land and all of the unholy perversions of the bloodline and the screwed up, messed up, perverted families that God didn't sanction, they all ended up being pushed and moved into the north. And then from there, they scattered all over the world. Why do I keep talking about this arcane subject of bloodlines and giants and all this crap? Because that was the way that Satan and the angels that followed him, that was the way that they've been delaying Satan getting his head crushed. He knows he can't win. He's fighting God, for God's sake. He knows God as well as anybody. He knows he can't win. So he's delaying and delaying and delaying and delaying. And you know what is the biggest thing happening in the world today, keeping Satan from getting what is coming to him, and the second coming of Jesus? Jesus told us. It's right there, and I'm blanking on the verse right now, but Jesus told us. He said, when the good news of the gospel of the kingdom of heaven is proclaimed throughout the world, then the end will come. So what does Satan have to do?
Delay that.
He has to delay that. So if you tell 3 people and they tell 3 people, we can get this done.
Amen.
We might be able to get it done in our lifetime. Who knows?
Amen.
But the only thing keeping it from happening is inaction on your part, is confusion on your part, on my part. You know? Anyway, God bless you. So next week we're going to talk about, next week we're definitely going to get to the widow of Zarephath, which is one of the things that Jesus cited that made him so mad that they wanted to kill him. And then we'll see if we can get to the story of Naaman. Yo, Bing Japanese Jesus.